We're always told to forgive and forget, that grace means giving people a second chance. But what if I told you that belief led to my best friend's death? This was Hannah Rivers, a pastor's daughter. She ran this community center, a place she called the Harbor. Her faith was her everything. If you were hurting, she was your safe place. She was the living example of grace. But 10 years ago, a man her family trusted, a man named Silas Thorne, betrayed them. He embezzled thousands from the church building fund. The scandal, the shame, it broke her father. He died of a broken heart not 6 months later. Silas was the shadow that destroyed her family. And then, a decade later, that shadow walked right back through her door. Silas came to her not with an apology, but with a proposition. It all started when Hannah saw an advertisement in the Kingdom Investor Journal, a call for proposals from faith-based community projects. With great hope, she submitted her vision for expanding the harbor. Weeks later, a sleek car pulled up outside. He stepped out, polished and professional, claiming to represent the very review board that had received her proposal. He was smooth, convincing. He told her he could secure a massive grant for the harbor from those investors he represented. It was more money than she could ever have dreamed of, enough to secure its future forever. But the condition was that he had to be the partner, the public face of it. He said it would be a story of redemption. He knew exactly what to say. He used words like testimony and kingdom work. I saw the look on Hannah's face. It was a mix of desire and pure terror. She was tempted by the good it could do, but her spirit was screaming in alarm.
Torn apart, she sought counsel. She went to Deacon Phillips first. He was a leader in the church, a good man, but he saw the world through the lens of reputation and budgets. He told her this was a divine test, that her father would have forgiven him. He said turning it down would look prideful, like she was unwilling to be a true example of grace. His words made her feel like saying no was a sin. Then she came to me down in my workshop. I remember the sawdust in the air. I looked her in the eye and I pleaded with her. I told her that Silas was a wolf who had just found a new set of sheep's clothing. I said, "Hannah, God already shut that door for a reason. Don't you dare think your wisdom is greater than his." I begged her to see the difference between forgiving a man and handing him a weapon. And so she was caught in the middle. The pressure was immense. I could see the war raging behind her eyes. She'd pray, but she was so clouded by the fear of what everyone would think, the fear of being seen as a bad Christian, that she couldn't hear God's peace anymore. The deacon's voice in her head was loud. "What will people say? You'll be a hypocrite. This is your chance to prove your faith." And my voice was just a faint echo. God shut that door. She started to believe that the riskier, more dangerous choice was actually the more faithful one. She convinced herself that trusting a known betrayer was a testament to her trust in God. It was a fatal miscalculation.
The fear of man is a snare. And right there in that office, I watched my friend step right into it. She called Silas. She told him yes. I wasn't there when she said the word, but I might as well have been. I could feel it. The air went out of the room. That divine peace she always carried, it vanished. She replaced it with the approval of people who wouldn't be there to pick up the pieces when it all fell apart. She met him to seal the deal, and I will never forget the sight of it. Her hand, the one that had fed the hungry and comforted the broken, reaching out to shake the hand of the man who broke her father. It was in slow motion, and as their hands touched, it wasn't a partnership that was formed, it was a trap. And the door, the one God had firmly closed, was now wide open.
At first, it was small things. "Hannah, let me handle the paperwork with the investors. It's complicated." Or, "I'll take this meeting. You're so busy with the people." He was like a virus, slowly taking over the system. I'd come by the harbor and see him at her desk, on her computer. His presence became a constant shadow in her sanctuary. The light in her eyes started to dim. The laughter that used to echo in the halls was replaced by the low, serious tone of hushed phone calls. She was always stressed, always looking over her shoulder. She stopped talking about visions and started talking about contracts. The weight of it was crushing her. She was drowning, and Silas was calmly standing on the shore, holding the rope she thought was her lifeline.
It all came to a head late one night. She was alone at the harbor. She finally felt that unease in her spirit turn into a command: check the books. Maybe it was God's last attempt to wake her up. She logged into the financial server, and that's when she saw it. Transfers she didn't authorize, invoices from companies that didn't exist. The grant money, it was already gone, siphoned away into accounts she couldn't access. He wasn't building a new wing. He was dismantling her life's work, brick by brick, dollar by dollar. His voice drops to a horrified, almost inaudible whisper, forcing the viewer to lean in. She printed the records. Her hands were shaking. The paper felt like ice. She traced the numbers with her finger, her breath catching in her throat. He hadn't just betrayed her again. He had set her up. The financial fraud would lead right back to her. Her reputation, her father's legacy, the harbor. It was all about to be destroyed. And in that moment, alone in the silence, she knew exactly who had done it. The heartbeat SFX stops abruptly. Dead silence for a beat. Micah's voice cracks with the raw emotion of the memory, the sheer terror on her face. I can still see it. It wasn't just fear. It was the horrifying, gut-wrenching realization that every single warning had been true, and that she was now utterly and completely alone, in the lion's den, with a man who had already shown her he had no soul. The call she made to him, it was her final act of courage. Her voice didn't shake. It was steady as stone. She told him to meet her at the harbor, that they needed to talk about the books. She said the words that sealed her fate. "It's over, Silas. I know everything." A long, painful pause. The only sound is a low, ominous drone. The creak of that front door opening haunts my dreams. His footsteps on the floorboards weren't a walk. They were a predator's stalk. He found her there, in the heart of her ministry, the evidence of his betrayal laid bare under the cold, fluorescent light. My voice drops even lower, almost inaudible, forcing the listener to lean in. What happened next? It wasn't a loud, dramatic fight. It was worse. It was intimate. A hushed, venomous argument that turned physical in a heartbeat. A sharp gasp, the sickening hollow thud of a body meeting unyielding wood. And then a silence so absolute it felt like the world had stopped breathing. His voice breaks, raw with the memory. He doesn't need further weapon. He pushed her. She hit her head on the edge of her desk and then harder on the bare floor. One moment of pure, desperate evil. And just like that, the light that was Hannah Rivers was extinguished. On the floor of the place she built with love, surrounded by the ghosts of all the good she had done. Micah's voice is urgent, the previous dread now crystallizing into terrifying certainty. Something woke me that night. A feeling, but it was more than a feeling. Hours earlier, Hannah had called me. Her voice was a tight wire of fear and resolve. She said, "Micah, you are right. I found it. Everything. Silas is evil.
I'm confronting him tonight. Pause. His tone becomes even graver. I begged her not to do it alone. I told her to wait for me or to call the police. But she was so sure she could get him to confess. She told me she had a safeguard. The old nanny cam she used to watch the front desk after hours. She said it's all on video. He can't talk his way out of this one.
That's why I drove through the rain. That's why my heart was pounding. She never called me back. And when her phone went straight to voicemail, I knew. I knew the confession hadn't gone the way she planned. That camera wasn't just her safeguard, it was her death sentence. The door was unlocked. The lights were blazing. And then I saw it. The faintest edge of her sleeve behind the desk. I knew. Oh God, I knew before I even saw her face. The scream that tore out of me, it wasn't my own. It was the sound of every person who ever loved her crying out at once. The flashing lights of the ambulance painted her walls in strokes of blue and red. They were too late. They were all too late. But the law moves with a cold, deliberate pace. They found him, not in some gutter, but in a penthouse, wrapped in a silk robe, holding a glass of amber whiskey. And when they put the cuffs on him, he didn't look guilty. He didn't look sad. He looked annoyed, inconvenienced, as if the tragic end of a beautiful life was nothing more than a minor disruption to his evening. They read him his rights and led him away, but as the door closed behind him, a terrifying question hung in the air, heavier than any jail cell door. In a court of law, where truth and lies danced together, could a man like that ever be truly held accountable for the darkness in his heart? Did the camera capture the incident? Did Silas find and destroy the footage? If I succeed in getting the camera footage, will it be enough to convict? Or would he find a way to spin his evil into a story a jury might just believe?
The defense's plea. And then his lawyer stood up. He talked about redemption and second chances. He put Silas in a soft sweater and told the jury to see a broken man, not a criminal. He took a sledgehammer to the truth and tried to sculpt a tragedy out of a calculated murder. Mercy. They had the audacity to ask for mercy. The same mercy Hannah showed him when she offered partnership. The same mercy he showed her when he left her body cold on the floor. They wanted us to forget the premeditation of his theft and focus only on the accident of her murder. The courtroom became our new world. A world of procedure and evidence, of objections and arguments. But at its heart, it was a battle for the truth about who Hannah was and who Silas Thorne truly is. The prosecutor, she was a force of nature. She stood before that jury, and she didn't just present a case. She painted a portrait of a predator. She showed them the financial records, his blueprint of betrayal. She showed them the crime scene photos of the ministry he defiled. He didn't just take her life. He executed a plan. He preyed upon her faith. He exploited her grace. And when her light threatened to expose his darkness, he snuffed it out. This was not a moment of panic. It was the final calculated act of a man who believes he is above consequence. She looked every juror in the eye, and she gave voice to our anger. She wasn't just asking for a conviction.
She was demanding that they look into the abyss of his soul and finally call it what it was: evil.
The defense's plea. And then his lawyer stood up. He talked about redemption and second chances. He put Silas in a soft sweater and told the jury to see a broken man, not a criminal. He took a sledgehammer to the truth and tried to sculpt a tragedy out of a calculated murder. Mercy. They had the audacity to ask for mercy. The same mercy Hannah showed him when she offered partnership. The same mercy he showed her when he left her body cold on the floor. They wanted us to forget the premeditation of his theft and focus only on the accident of her murder.
The day of the verdict, the air was so thick you could choke on it. The jury filed in. Their faces were unreadable. Silas, for the first time, wasn't smirking, he was sweating. The judge asked the question. The whole world held its breath. On the count of murder in the second degree, we find the defendant guilty. Guilty.
Guilty. His head didn't drop in shame. It dropped in defeat, like a chess player who had finally been checkmated. The law had done what it could. It had held him accountable. It had labeled his evil for the public record. And as they led him away in handcuffs, I felt nothing. No joy, no peace, just a vast, empty silence, because the law could give us justice, but it could never give us back our Hannah. After the verdict, I found myself at her grave. The stone was cold. The world felt so quiet. Deacon Phillips found me there. He looked older, shaken to his core, and he said, 50 years. It's what he deserved. The law did its job. I looked from him to Hannah's name carved in that stone, and I said, the law punished the outcome, Deacon Phillips. It could judge his hands for pushing her, but only God could see and judge his heart for planning it. The law gave us justice, but Hannah needed protection long before the law could ever get involved. That was our job, and we failed her. The courtroom could define the crime, but it couldn't convict the pressure that made her ignore the warning in her spirit. It couldn't try the well-intentioned lies that sound so spiritual but lead to such destruction.
This is the truth that now guides my life. The Bible tells us in 1 Samuel chapter 16, the Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. God saw the evidence in Silas's heart long before a jury saw the evidence in a file. And I believe with every fiber of my being that when God closed that door all those years ago, He wasn't being harsh, He was being merciful. He was acting on the divine evidence to protect her. Listen to me, your boundary is not you playing God, it is you trusting God's verdict on a person's character. It is you agreeing with what He already sees. Obeying that closed door is the highest form of faith. Don't wait for a courtroom to prove someone's intentions. Don't wait for the tragedy to justify the boundary. Obey the closed door now. Let God's protection be enough. Your life, your peace, and your God-given purpose are worth protecting. If this message resonated with you, if you've ever felt pressured to reopen a door God closed, please let this be your sign. Share this video with one person who needs to hear it. Like this video to help others find this crucial teaching. And please, subscribe to our channel, Timeless Parables 247, and hit the notification bell. We are here to help you navigate life with biblical wisdom and powerful, real stories every week. To go deeper on this, watch our previous video, Forgiveness Without Reconciliation, where we break down the exact scripture that teaches us how to forgive without putting ourselves back in harm's way. And then, What door has God closed in your life that you needed to hear this message to finally leave shut? Share your story in the comments below. Let's support each other in living wisely.